tell you something, kid. Everybody gets one chance to do something great. Most people never take the chance, either because they're too scared or they don't recognize it when it spits on their shoes. This is your big chance, and you shouldn't let it go by.
Change. The human race is a complicated species of creatures. So divisive and so debative, it's simply human nature as to why we are so unique to one another. Each of us differing in so many various qualities, characteristics, opinions, but among some of the few common consensuses in which we all share an ideal point of view, similar to that of the sense of purpose or belonging. However, I'd argue much more complex and personal despite its seemingly simple principle. No, if there is one thing in which all humans who have ever lived on this planet could ever agree upon, it has to do with the paradoxical concept of change. We're creatures of habit, right? We stick with what we like, we avert from any daunting new tasks we're unknown with, and we just generally don't like change. Simple, huh? I mean, yeah, we change via the exponential curve of human progress, steadily growing more and more intelligent and aware of our surroundings and technological limitations, but that's change in the grand scheme of things. Who's to say I'm gonna stand out amidst these technological marvels? If anything, these same revolutionary machines are just gonna force me to assimilate into these new changing times. Something in which no one is ever excited for, but begrudgingly have to accept, because, hey, this is just the way things are now. Everything is changing, more rapidly than ever before, and yet, here I am, stuck in the same endless cycle of waking up, going to work, coming home, inebriated by the drowning pleasures of the world, succumbing to the system, and growing in immense misery, longing for a desire to fly away, yet with nowhere to fly to, wishing day after day for an escape, for a call to adventure, waiting for things to be different, waiting for things to change. This self-contradicting paradox of change has forever self-inflicted our society. It seems like everyone is never welcome when it comes to adapting to change, nor preparing for a bleak future on the horizon. With how many instances in which people complain, nay, loathe about how much they hate evolving with the times or being a better individual, why does it feel like no one is ever content with their current situation? Why does it feel like, despite being in the most rapid growth in human progress ever conceived by mankind, people are more depressed each and every day, miserable of who they are and how little they view themselves? After all, it's no wonder why the two most relatable sentences anyone can utter are, "I just want to be loved," and "I just want to be happy." Perhaps our answer can best be found in the common activity which tends to make most people happy, that being human connectivity, with the deepest roots of such being none other than stories. Human society as we know it runs on stories. Every piece of history you've ever learned of, whether it be fact or fiction, and every tale you've ever heard of, whether it be true or made up, it's all just storytelling. Storytelling which has guided the course of human history to where we are now. As ideas and philosophy continue to spread more and more, so do changes in story and literacy, as every individual, culture, or background has their own tale to tell, some of which being much less conventional and more particular than the last. Mythology, fantasy, religion, philosophy, drama, all of these genres of literacy have each respectively exploded in popularity and widespread influence for their own correspondent era, many of which growing too ancient and old-fashioned for the modern day, as most if not everything which could possibly be said or expanded upon these genres has already been done to completion before you and I were long conceived in this world. I guess that's just how things are. Old things obsolete, wither into obscurity, and make way for the next big thing. All of which remains true, except for one genre in particular. Despite being thousands upon thousands of years old, told countless of numerous times in different texts and epics throughout the ages, spoken in almost every tongue across every nation, remains the most popular and extensive, yet most played out and expected genre of them all. These legends, myths, fairy tales, stories of all varying narrative and caliber all together share one exact similar structure, in which one common citizen of great worth and merit must embark on a quest to a land far beyond the horizon to overcome every obstacle which stands between them, all while changing as an individual through personal growth as achieved via hardship. They accomplish their goal, conquer the evil forces of nature, and finally return home as the same individual in question, but forever changed in character and heroism. Or how most people know it. As I previously mentioned, the hero's journey is without a shadow of a doubt the most popular and widespread influential genre of all literacy and storytelling. The genre to top all genres. Encompassing all forms of media such as books, film, television, theater, musicals, video games, it should be no surprise whatsoever that the most popular and successful products of these respective mediums just so happen to be the classic hero's journeys. As a matter of fact, I would wager that a large majority of people's favorite pieces of media just so happen to fall under the same category. Speaking from personal experience, the same holds true for me, given my list of favorite movies and games of all time. I love these pieces of media to death, yet they are all classified under the same common denominator, with it being the analogous story structure. Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, Pokemon, The Wizard of Oz, Dune, Percy Jackson, even Star Wars for crying out loud. All of the most popular IPs and most iconic films and novels over the past century all unite under one common banner.
My friends, tonight we unveil my most diabolical creation, the Platinum Chip.
With that being said, it begs the question, why? Why do we just love this same old story structure so much? It's been around for way too long, told time and time again, starting all the way from the Epic of Gilgamesh, and quickly evolving with Homer's Odyssey, Dante's Inferno, Shakespeare's Hamlet, and soon following its way to the modern day, comprised of the same plot, same archetypes, same elements. How have we not grown tired of this format of storytelling, unlike every other genre in existence? With every other genre device, you'll find so many criticisms and critiques about how, oh, it's so generic and repetitive and played out in exactly what you expect. Yet, although the same argument isn't as apparent nor widely contested as the most played out and generic trope in all of fiction. So, what is just so darn special about this one in particular? What makes the human condition and human psychology so in love with the hero's journey to the point at which we don't care if it's this endlessly repetitive and monotonous? And we still love it anyway. Many will point to the epic and extensive world building which encompasses a hero's respective universe as being the sole benefactor to why people love the genre. One of the best examples of such is none other than The Lord of the Rings. The incredible world of Middle-earth as told through the lenses of our main characters is nothing less than extraordinary. All of these formidable armies and impenetrable strongholds, surrounded by such beautiful scenery and aesthetically staggering creatures. Magic, elves, wizards, orcs, all of these elements and fundamentals are the cornerstones of the fantasy genre. While The Lord of the Rings does revolve around the long and strenuous journey of Frodo and Sam trekking to Mount Doom to destroy the Ring of Power, quite literally being a hero's journey, I would argue that the awe-inspiring world building of Middle-earth is more attributed to and accredited by the fantasy genre as a whole, written in great description by J.R. Tolkien. So, claiming that your love of these movies and those akin to The Lord of the Rings is primarily due to the world surrounding you holds little to no relation toward the actual hero to begin with. Don't get me wrong, while it does drastically influence the journey altogether, it doesn't provide much logical explanation as to why we view such utter fascination in the story structure that is the hero's journey. This same logic applies to other popular films, such as Dune, based on the novel by Frank Herbert. In this instance, the cool concept and world building in the universe isn't attributed to Paul's journey to take over Arrakis and is more or less a compliment towards the science fiction genre, which defines the story altogether. Another prevalent reason which various people might claim to love the genre is the supernatural forces of nature, which remains a common theme and literary device to help the hero accomplish their task and grow better as an individual. While this element could be bunched together with the world building, the supernatural is much more of a personal, philosophical connection to the characters, which changes how they view the world around them time and time again. The best and most popular example of this would have to be the mystical power of the Force from Star Wars, representing a key foundational pillar amidst the entire overarching story. In the case of Luke Skywalker, the once simple poor farmer boy scraping by the poverty line on the remote planet of Tatooine, he discovers the ways of the Force when thrusted into action on his own separate journey, thus inspiring him to learn and master the ways of the Force, soon transforming into a powerful Jedi Knight as a means to confront his father and restore peace to the galaxy. The Force is such a pivotal, fundamental symbol to the story, to the point that it wouldn't be a bold statement to claim that there is no Star Wars without the Force. But despite this spiritual awakening from Luke and all of the other characters from the franchise, it still has no major influence to the inner workings and plot structure of the hero's journey, nor is it a valid argument to support that this would be the sole adjudicator as to why you love the respective genre.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Even though these are just reasons as to why they don't properly correlate with the genre and story structure of the hero's journey, I feel it necessary to remind you that there is no objective piece of plot which dictates whether you like a form of media or not, regardless of genre. People are free to enjoy a movie or book for whichever reasons they like, and no one's opinion, let alone mine, is gospel. However, one key aspect which others will note as a common appreciation toward the genre is 100% worth discussion, as it is perhaps the most important centerpiece of the whole phenomenon, with it being, of course, the good old-fashioned Ever since childhood, we hear stories and fairy tales of those whose intentions are beyond immoral. So rooting for the good guy who wishes to conquer evil has always remained a core aspect of such stories. And like many things from childhood, the lessons and fascinations in which we grasp toward at such a young, impressionable age tend to lead to a bigger role in our later adulthood. Those who appreciate the hero's journey solely for the classic battle between good versus evil remains the foundational cornerstone of this whole thing to begin with. If you were to inquire more about why we love good versus evil, it would be quite difficult for anyone to articulate a proper answer. In the most simplest of all explanation, there is just something so intriguing and utterly satisfying about following the work and heroism of the small, feeble protagonist, overcoming all the odds and achieving the impossible, by averting every obstacle and roadblock, facing every struggle and hardship, slaying every dragon and evil wizard. That just makes it so joyous and rewarding. Nah, you can't gloss over such a universally known trope without mention of the underdog. Although the origins of the term is unknown, it is likely that it came into fruition from early 1900s sports culture, as the underdog would be a frequent nickname given to the weakest link in the chain, the team who's largely expected to lose. Possibly the most famous underdog victory in the history of sports would have to be the monumental World Series victory as achieved by the Chicago Cubs in Major League Baseball. For background context, the Chicago Cubs were infamous for their consistent losing streak of over 100 years, being viewed as the scrappy reject team who became the runt of the joke in all of Major League Baseball, possibly cursed to never even come close to winning a game, let alone the Big Star Championship. Well, that all changed during the 2016 World Series, when the Chicago Cubs were doing shockingly well in terms of wins, so much so to the point that many dedicated Cubs fans thought that they had a chance at winning the whole championship. But many others believed it to be a lucky fluke, and that they'd inevitably get crushed and keep the losing streak going. Well, as it turns out, in November of 2016, the Chicago Cubs were facing in the final championship game against the Cleveland Indians. And the once nationwide joke of a baseball team had the entire country rooting them on, except for Ohio. And as history would dictate, on November 2nd of 2016, the Chicago Cubs would defeat the Cleveland Indians as the entire nation watched in joy and jubilance, as the scrappy underdog had conquered the impossible and succeeded in their victory in one of the biggest sporting events of all time. Given such a rare historical moment of what felt like the whole world cheering on the underdog, it's evidential yet unconventional proof that there is just some unexplainable aspect of human nature as to why we always root for the little guy no matter how stacked the odds are against him. There's something so unbelievably satisfying about watching such a seemingly ordinary and insignificant everyday man come out on top against the big dogs who've remained the apex predator for so long. It really helps demonstrate the human conventions of philosophy and psychology, as we tend to automatically side with whomever may look tiny and timid, in stark comparison to the ferocious, imposing appearance of the stereotypical caricature based on our inner consciousness and perception. As a quick little brief exercise, here are a couple of sketch drawings of two random cartoonish characters. Without telling you any background, backstory, anything whatsoever, do you think you could tell me which one is most likely to be the hero and which one is most likely to be the villain? Well, of course you can, because anyone who's anyone would obviously identify the one on the left to be the big, bad, evil guy. Under no circumstances would this be the objective case, as we only have the appearance to go off of and nothing else. But because of our perceptive reasoning, which has been embedded into our psyche and thought process from such a young age, I'm afraid that this is just the way things go. I'm aware this is such a simple, frankly pointless thought experiment, but I just find it so fascinating how we automatically deduce such characteristics just from our prior knowledge of stories we've been ingrained in for our entire life. And this isn't just modern media too. For the best, most popular instance of this big evil guy, scrappy underdog dynamic, first originated in the Old Testament. The story of David and Goliath features the 9-foot imposing giant of Goliath, taunting and challenging the Israelite soldiers to a one-on-one battle by way of the Philistine army. Due to his gargantuan proportions and powerful weaponry at his ready, deeming this an impossible feat and a lost cause would be an understatement. However, in a stew of triumph at the silence of the crowd, Goliath takes notice of a young shepherd boy named David, who gladly accepts his request to fight. The Israelite army, struck with hopeless disbelief, accepts that there is no way David could possibly survive for even a minute against Goliath. With the power of God and anime on his side, David hurls a stone with his sling, bashing against the giant's forehead, killing him in one fell swoop. Reading through the biblical story and the religious text actually reveals much more to the character of David than most people realize. According to chapter 17 of the first book of Samuel, where the story is actually located, you could learn some pretty bizarre stuff which most people tend to neglect when retelling the story. For instance, did you know that David actually beheaded Goliath shortly after chucking a stone at his temples? With his own sword, nonetheless. All of this in a display of power to assert his dominance over the Philistine army. David was only like 12, by the way. He was the youngest of his family members, and yet he got to slay a colossal caveman in sandals. All with a humongous sword well beyond his weight, at the helm of his friends and family, for everyone to see. You know, for being the most popular and integral book in all of human civilization and organized religion, the Bible sure is a pretty dark book. Oh, and if you think that's overkill. Earlier in the book, during the mass exodus of the children of Israel, Moses is literally commanded by God to slaughter all of the Israelite children who worship the golden calf by way of mass execution. I'm not joking.
Not again. Obi-Wan's gonna kill me.
On the topic of religion and theology, it seems most appropriate to discuss a man well too familiar with religious texts and literary analysis. His name is Joseph Campbell. Born and raised into a Catholic household, Campbell grew up with a particular infatuation on philosophical literature, one whose focus was of religion, mythology, time, ancestry, and the most enticing of which, human condition. This allurement was all too much for the growing curiosity of Mr. Campbell, as he would later take his studies elsewhere, more specifically to the Ivy League School of Columbia University, majoring in English literature and soon graduating with a Bachelor of Arts degree. He would spend the rest of his life pursuing the same persisting curiosity, which ultimately led him to writing his best renowned piece of work, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. In his book, he goes into great depth and intricate detail of this exact same question we find ourselves asking. Why? Why does it feel like every story ever possibly conceived is written in the exact same formula? And why do we just love it so much? While many other pieces of work have attempted to answer this before, none have ever come close to capturing such masterclass resemblance to what makes this genre so special, amassing his final consensus into one extremely lengthy and in-depth blueprint. And keep in mind, this dude is not a screenwriter or a world-renowned author. He wasn't a political activist, he wasn't a scholar, a professor, a philosopher, he wasn't even that good of an essayist. And yet he is still credited for influencing and inspiring George Lucas's creation and publication of Star Wars. All on his Wikipedia page, nonetheless. At the end of the day, this is just a devout Catholic, goody two-shoes, wouldn't spit on his grandma, Joe Soup Can, who just loved to compare and contrast the stark similarities between Native American folklore and the parables of Christ. It was only a matter of time until he dedicated his entire life's work to studying every organized religion and its respective myths and legends, only to keep arriving at the same conclusion that all of these stories are strikingly similar in plot structure, character archetypes, everything. All of his findings, reasonings, and thought processes brilliantly compiled and abridged into Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. I strongly recommend giving this book a quick look and just skimming through the pages upon pages of, well, whatever you would call this. Obviously, I don't expect anyone to read it all the way through. I mean, Lord knows I didn't, but I still included a link to a downloadable PDF if you too possess a curious mindset like unto Joey Joe Joseph himself. Isn't it funny and deeply ironic that a long compendium of religious excerpts passed down from religion and mythology is altogether assembled into one book detailing a man's life work of research and investigation, only for the same work to be elevated to such high levels of praise and stupendous influence to every film and screenwriter in existence, only for it to become its own religious text in a way? What I'm trying to get at here is that Joseph Campbell laid the groundwork for every hero's journey which is yet to come, and also every other story which has already been told to such critical acclaim. A universal framework which would forever be studied in the art of literature and creative writing, the Da Vinci Code for what would be every ancient and modern work of art, and as Campbell put it best, it would be widely known and referred to as The monomyth is the foundational framework and blueprint, which outlines every stage and element of the hero's journey, while also haunting the wettest dreams of every creative writing major in existence. Just by looking at the diagram without further investigation, it's easy to picture and envision a common form of media which follows in the same footsteps of the template. Even though some of these stages and explanations are a bit more confusing at a first glance, other respected writers have followed in suit by creating a more simplified, modern-day take on the monomyth structure, one of the most notable being Disney screenwriter Christopher Vogler. Now, I'm not going to make you split into groups and do a whole group project on debunking every little atom of this diagram, but let's instead consider this whole thing in one fell swoop. We first begin with the protagonist living in an ordinary world where he's grown well accustomed to, before stumbling into sudden conflict that something is terribly wrong. Despite his initial refusal, he is instructed by a like-minded mentor figure to accept the call to adventure and depart from his homeland to save the world. Our hero is initiated into the unknown by facing his fears head-on and crossing the first threshold, typically by aid of his newly acquired allies and friends. After an encounter with some supernatural force, the hero is faced with his biggest trial yet of great perseverance and determination, before reflecting on his innermost desire and strive to conquer all evil until briefly locked in combat face-to-face with the main antagonist. Through struggles and sacrifice, our hero defeats his main opponent and saves the day, only to return home as a changed man undergoing a personal transformation and metamorphosis while living to tell the tale. The end. Fade to black. Roll the credits to be continued, question mark. That's pretty much it. But while the journey itself is laid out in such a structural, systematized scenario, the best, most interchangeable facet of this whole ordeal has to be the protagonist, the hero at question here. I mean, is he a hero? Could have sworn he was just a regular, ordinary, squeamish dude a couple hours ago, and yeah, you'd be right in that regard. Our hero is the everyday man, the one who strives to do the best they possibly can do, whether or not it means much in the grand scheme of things. From everything we've looked at thus far, it seems the most apparent that our psychological love for this silly little fairy tale ultimately comes down to the relation and relatability between us and the main protagonist. Generally speaking, all of us tend to live in pretty standard, ordinary lives, accustomed to the ways of old, wishing for things to be different, wishing for a spark and adventure, wishing to transform into a much better individual after facing all the trials and tribulations which are plagued amidst the struggles of life, wishing for nothing but change. Watching our main hero, seeing every thought they express, every decision they make, every obstacle they overcome, it isn't too far off from seeing ourselves in a similar position. When the walls come crumbling down and when the steel begins to wither away, forgotten like the dust in the sand, we always share the same desire. At the end of the day, everyone just wants to be happy and wind up successful in whichever endeavors they may find themselves in. After all, isn't that all what we want, right? I know that everyone is prone to define success in their own personal way, but struggling to achieve such admiration is hindered by our frankly ordinary lives and mediocre lifestyles. I mean, come on, what kind of everyday man of mediocrity is going to achieve such high levels of feat and incredible wonders? Well, I'll tell you what. It's him, the hero. And it doesn't just have to be a him, it could be her or they or you. We witness the hero in every story in a similar perspective as to ourselves, wishing to break free from such an ordinary yet comfortable lifestyle, striving to be the best person that you can possibly be, conquering every personal roadblock and obstacle which hinders us from progressing further and further toward our very goal. We cheer and root for the little guy because we've been in the exact same scenario before, wallowing in complete and utter hopelessness as the odds are too stacked against us, that there's no way that we can win. It's impossible, right? Well, not for Lon, because we are all heroes, each living our own individual story. And boy, do we have incredible stories to tell. It's no surprise whatsoever that many up-and-coming writers will typically write a classic hero's journey as one of their first big projects, because that's who they view themselves as. A skimpish common dweller who breathes life into every creation they come up with. And as more and more people write with this same formula, more and more people grow attached to the story, the characters, the drive to achieve the impossible, the innermost desire to live like their own personal hero. You know what that'd be perfect for? Writing my own hero's journey. It all makes sense now. The reason as to why we're humanly conditioned to love the hero's journey all boils down to relatability of personal triumph and self-discovery. And it's no wonder why the most fleshed out characters in all of fiction experience their own personal self-discovery, and why we can't help but cheer them on and rejoice in their own personal victory, whether it be big or small. Frodo Baggins, Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, Katniss Everglade, Paul Atreides, heck, every single anime in all of existence. These are the prime time perfect examples of such incredible characters who've undergone such major transformation. The transformation which we have all sought to become like for our entire existence. The transformation which we once thought was impossible for as long as we can remember. The transformation into the best person we can possibly be. Only to return home as the same individual in question, but forever changed in all the right ways. Forever changed to live the rest of their life as something they had never viewed themselves as. Forever changed as a hero. So, the new question becomes, will we ever stop loving the hero's journey? Will we ever grow stale of it eventually? Well, it's been around for so long already. Who's to say it's gonna wither away anytime soon? If anything, I would say that these heroes are better referred to as legends. Because you know what they say, heroes get remembered, but legends never die.